Welcome to the Coming Apocalypse. Evangelist and pastor Paul Begley will take you on a journey into the end times prophecy. He'll examine current world events and explain how they relate to the end times. For decades, Pastor Begley has provided people all over the world with an understanding of today's world events from a biblical perspective. Now here's your host, Pastor Paul Begley.
Are you serious? Welcome to the Coming Apocalypse. I'm Pastor Paul Begley, and today we got a powerful program, very interesting, the fig tree generation. Now, first of all, people are saying, what is that? Jesus makes reference to this. This is a very important subject, the fig tree itself, and how he relates the nation of Israel and the end times to that of a fig tree. And when you say generation, what do you mean? 40 years? Do you mean 70 years? Do you mean 80 years? Do you mean the entire 120 years, the life, total life possibility for a human being? What do you mean by the generation, and how do we analyze that or put that into biblical prophecy? When we come back, that's exactly what we're going to look at in just a moment.
What's better than one of Pastor Paul Begley's eye-opening webinars? What about two Paul Begley webinars? Now get both of the amazing Supernatural Intelligence webinars in one multi-DVD set. There's so much information it took 2 weekends in 2 different cities to cover it all. Watch presentations from experts on AI, mind science, exorcism, demonology, historical documentaries, and more. The Supernatural Intelligence DVD set, available now at paulbegleyprophecy.com.
All right. I'm glad you're back, folks. Here we go. Fig tree generation. Jesus makes reference to a fig tree, and he talks about it as looking at biblical prophecy, especially the last days or the last few years of the end of time, if you will, and the coming of the Lord, the end of the age. If you go to the book of Mark, chapter 13, let's read what Christ said in the word of the Lord. He said this in verse 28. Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When her branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, you know that summer is near. So ye in like manner, when you shall see these things come to pass, know that it is nigh, even at the doors. Verily I say unto you that this generation shall not pass till all these things be done. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away. Now, Jesus said, until all these things are fulfilled, the end of the age will not come. What things? Well, stay in this chapter, right here in Mark 13. Look what Jesus said. He was asked the question about what are the signs of the coming of the Lord? What should we look to? How will we know that we're in the last days? And here's what Jesus said. You can start at verse 5. He said, take heed lest any man deceive you, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And when you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, be ye not troubled, for such things must needs be, but the end shall not be yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And there shall be earthquakes in divers places, and there shall be famines and troubles. These are the beginning of sorrows. So he breaks down the wars, the rumors of wars, nations rising. Later he talks about these apocalyptic events, famines, pestilence, plagues, earthquakes. And we're seeing record earthquakes, record volcanic eruptions. The heavens are shaking. Asteroids are racing by the earth. The sun is literally releasing strong CMEs, and the radiation levels on this planet are the highest they've ever been, and they're 20% higher than they were 3 years ago. He talks about Revelation that the river Euphrates will dry up. Folks, 9 years ago compared to now, the river Euphrates has dried up 85% than it was 9 years ago. And that's by looking at Google Maps, comparing the satellite images. It's unbelievable. We see the Middle East in a total state of chaos. And there's been the fighting and the killing and the rise of radical extreme terrorists, and how that there's confusion and protesting in the European Union, and even the gridlock, the deadlock, the tensions, the political turmoil, even in the United States. Things are seemingly rocking and rolling. The earth is shifting. The poles are even moving at accelerated rate. In other words, you can't stop the wildfires in California. 2017, they broke all-time record of wildfires. 2018 broke those records. I mean, we're talking 20,000 homes burn up in the hills of California, and the tornadoes and all the things. So, okay, Jesus said you're going to see all that. But when you see all that, that's not the only signs. You have to look at the political turmoil, and you have to look at the other things. How about the sin? How about the abominations? How about they say evil's good and good is evil? How about the disrespect for life, and the disrespect for marriage, and the disrespect for the home, and the disrespect for authority? I mean, how much more do I gotta go? Are you serious? Are you serious? What I'm telling you is we're living in the fig tree generation. How do you know it, Pastor? Because Israel became a nation. 1948. Whenever it was prophesied in the book of Ezekiel in chapter 37, God showed Ezekiel a valley of dry bones. And he said, look, son of man, can these bones live? And he said, I don't know, Lord, you tell me. And the Lord said, prophesy to them, preach to them, prophesy that they're going to rise up and become this mighty army, this mighty nation. And again, the prophets of the Old Testament start saying Israel's going to come together. It's going to be rebirth. God would send the Jewish people from the four corners of the earth. He would bring them back to Jerusalem, back to the Holy Land. And folks, after the Holocaust of the World War II, and seriously, almost trying to extinguish the Jewish people, God had a remnant, and that remnant was replaced, and they went back to their homeland. And in 1947, there was a declaration made on November the 29th, 1947, that Israel would become a non-member state. But let's talk about this. 40 years? Are we talking the generations 40 years? Are we talking generations 70? Maybe 80 by reason of strength? Or Moses was told that man's allotted days would be 120 years. All right, in 1917, that's when the Balfour Declaration was made, that the Holy Land would no longer be under Ottoman Empire. You have to understand, the Holy Land had been under the Babylonian Empire, under the Persian Empire, under the Roman Empire, under the Ottoman Empire. How many times did it change? Even the British took control for a little while there. And check this out. So in 1917, the Balfour Declaration's made. And so the Holy Land now is under what's called the British Mandate. And for the next 30 years, it's kind of a no-man land, but there are Jews that are returning. It's what's known as the law of return. And in 1947, after World War II ended, the United Nations said, what are we going to do with all these Jewish refugees in Europe? We're going to let them go back to their homeland. Matter of fact, Jews anywhere in the world can go back to the homeland if they choose. And so, again, 1947. So you have a 30-year period there, but it's in May 14th, 1948, that Israel became a nation. God had restored Israel as a nation and had taken this 2,000-year prophecy and had brought them back. Unbelievable. People had even given up. I've got a book at home in my library. It's 144 years old. It's the history of the church. It's from Genesis and the children of Israel's plight to the birth of the church at the day of Pentecost, all the way into the popes of Rome and the Reformation with Martin Luther, and the Protestant different denominations, and each time they split, and each time they made, look at this, folks. The whole time that the church was evolving, they were preaching that Israel would one day be restored as a nation. They preached that message. They prophesied it until the year 1870. And they said, maybe we missed it. Maybe God doesn't really mean he's going to actually restore Israel as a nation. Maybe this was just metaphorically. And the book I have it's 144 years old, but this book goes till 1874. So what happens is they gave up. They gave up and thought maybe we missed it. A lot of times people say, I don't know, I've been hearing Jesus is coming back. Jesus is coming back. My grandmother said it. Times are going to get bad. I've been hearing that all my life. Pastor, maybe Jesus isn't really coming back. Maybe it was just, we should just follow his teachings and also listen to some of the other great philosophers and some of the other great, theologians and people of different persuasion, maybe different even religions, and just see if there's different ways to heaven. Maybe there's many different ways. Maybe Christ isn't really returning. I've actually heard this being preached in today's world. They're starting to lose faith that Christ is coming. But trust me, as sure as I'm looking at that camera at you, Jesus Christ, the Son of the living God, is going to return. And he's coming during the fig tree generation, whatever that time starts. So let me take you there. 1917, the Balfour Declaration. 1947, Israel becomes a Jewish state, a non-member or non-voting state in the United Nations. May 14th, 1948, Israel becomes a nation, fulfilling biblical prophecy. 1967, the Six-Day War. Israel's attacked from the south, from the Jordanians, from the Lebanese came down, the Egyptians across the Sinai. Here come the Syrians over the Golan Heights, and the Palestinians rose up right in the streets of Jerusalem. A 5-front war attack on this nation that was still so young. It was only 19 years old. And it was outnumbered. Egypt had outnumbered their tanks 10-1. But through the power of God, in 6 days, Israel defeated every one of its enemies and took back part of southern Lebanon, took the Golan Heights from Syria, took some of Jordan's property, and even took the whole Sinai Peninsula if they wanted it. But all of that was actually originally promised land given to Abraham. So they gave some of that back, strategically securing themselves. Now that Israel's in position, 1967, they also reunified the city of Jerusalem, and it became one city. And then again, 1973, it's called the Yom Kippur War, where Israel was attacked. But you think about 1917 to 1967, that was 50 years. From the Balfour Declaration to Jerusalem being reunified. 50 years is a jubilee. And then you go to the year 2018, the 70th anniversary of Israel as a nation. That very day, the United States moved its U.S. embassy to Jerusalem. President Trump declared that Jerusalem was the eternal city of God and the capital of Israel. And on the 70th anniversary, is that the fig tree generation? Do we start in 1917? Or do we start in 1948? Or do we start when it's unified in 1967? Or do we start now? People are debating this. Is it 40 years? Is it 70 years? Is it 80 years? Is it 120 years? And what's the starting point of this fig tree? Folks, no one knows that. But if you watch the signs of the last days, you'll see what Jesus said is going to happen. Look at verse 28 again. Jesus says this in Mark 13:28. Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When her branch is yet tender and putting forth leaves, you know that summer is near. So ye in like manner, when you shall see these things come to pass, know that it is nigh, even at the doors. Verily I say unto you that this generation shall not pass till all these things be done. When we come back, we're going to talk about what else Jesus said about the fig tree, because it pertains to his coming. I'll be right back. A brand new book I've just finished called Reflections from the Land of the Prophets. This book is filled with beautiful pictures, a pictorial, if you will, of the Holy Land, and some definite great insight to the prophets that once spoke mightily in the times leading us up to the present. It's a prophetic word, a reflection of what God has spoken, not only historically from the past, but for the future. Go to my website. It's available now. All right. So this fig tree, I mean, seriously, the fig tree, why does Jesus keep coming back to it? Matter of fact, go with me to Matthew 24 for a minute. Maybe we can pin down this and get some clues to what we need to do with this fig tree generation. Well, in Matthew 24, Jesus said these words, starting around verse 32. Actually, let me back it up. Let's start at verse 27. It says, "For as lightning cometh out of the east, and shineth even unto the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For wheresoever the carcass is, there will the eagles be gathered together. And immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of power, in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory." Now, this is a picture being painted of and you see here, it says that, the sun is darkened, the moon will turn to blood, basically be darkened, and also the stars will fall from heaven. Well, we're going to find out a little bit more about that in just a moment. But if we read on, we'll find what Jesus says about the fig tree. Look at verse 32. It says, "Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, you know that summer is nigh." All right? "So likewise ye, when you shall see all these things, know that it is near, even at the doors. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my word shall not pass away. But of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only." So Jesus says, when you look at a fig tree and you see that its leaves are tender, you know it's almost summertime. If you see these signs that he talks about in Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21, then you'll know it's at the door, that you're very close to the coming of the Lord. And Jesus makes reference to this fig tree generation. He calls them this generation. Some people they've wrestled with this and they lose sleep over it. Stop it. You don't have to do that, okay? God's got it figured out. But certainly, you're in the team picture because Israel's now a nation. And when Israel had to be rebirthed, this was a huge, think about this. Think of the prophecies of the Old Testament saying that unto us a child is born, okay? The government's gonna be upon his shoulders. A virgin's gonna conceive. All right, so we get these prophecies from Isaiah, but we got to wait 800-900 years. And then finally, the Christ child is born. Now we're given the prophecy by Jesus that, hey, just like the fig tree, look at the things I'm telling you. When you start seeing these things, you know that the end is very near. Well, here we are, folks, 2,000 years later. We have Israel as a nation. They've just celebrated their 70th anniversary. And we're seeing all of the things in Matthew 24, literally, maybe even worse. And you can even go into the scriptures in the book of in the epistles where Paul talks about in the last days, perilous times shall come. Men will be lovers of pleasure more than lovers of God. They'll be heady, high-minded, truce breakers, incontent, fierce, without natural affection, okay? They'll be blinded by the spirit of delusion, and they start saying good is evil and evil is good. When you start seeing these things happen, you're right at the door. And so instead of trying to figure out the exact dates, can't put a timeline exactly. I've studied the end times, that 244 times, men of God predicted the end of time. 244 times they made a prediction, they set a date, 244 times they've been wrong. A lot of these were good men of God. Maybe all, I don't know, but a lot of them I know were. But they got so consumed with the timeline, with the hermeneutics, trying to figure out the mind of God. When Jesus told you, they even asked Jesus, they said, when will you restore the nation of Israel? They asked him that question. He said, look, that's not for you to know. The power, the times and the seasons, that's in the hands of my Father. He'll make that decision. And that's what I'm saying. No, Jesus even says the angels don't know, Christ don't know, only the Father. But you can see the day approaching. So he said, watch and pray, for an hour you think not, the Son of Man cometh, okay? He also said, pray that you be worthy to escape the hour of temptation that's coming upon the earth. All right? So you can get ready. You can get saved. You can be born again. And most of you out there watching are saved. And so you got two things to do. Shine the light of the love of Jesus Christ to everyone you meet. And also begin the process of showing people that the fig tree, it's got leaves on it. The fig tree's got leaves on it. Matter of fact, I think the figs are growing. Okay, I mean, we're at the end here. Let me show you something. Let's go to the book of Revelation. If you go to the book of Revelation, chapter 6, Jesus makes reference, the angel that gives this information to John, brings up the fig tree again, but compares some of the events going to be going on, very similar to what Jesus said over here about the powers of heaven shall be shaken. Here's what it says. When the sixth seal is broken, Revelation chapter 6, start at verse 12. And I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. And the stars of heaven fell unto the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she's shaken of a mighty wind. Jesus brings up the fig tree again. In other words, Jesus brought it up in Matthew 24, in Mark 13, and now here you are. John is receiving this in the revelation of Jesus Christ and says, when you see the stars falling from the heaven, okay, you'll know that this is the breaking of that sixth seal. There's going to be catastrophic, cataclysmic, apocalyptic events going on in that end time. And it even says the heaven departed as a scroll when it's rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. So there's going to be a major, major event. Now go back with me to Matthew 24. So let's read that again about the fig tree. Jesus says again in verse 29, Matthew 24, 29, immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of heavens shall be shaken. So that's very similar to the verse found in Revelation 6:13, which is the breaking of the sixth seal. So Jesus is telling us that there's a process that's going to happen. There's going to be, these seals are going to break. That's why we did that. We did that, the four horsemen of the apocalypse, okay? And we got a DVD on that. That four horsemen of the apocalypse. When you look at that white horse, the red horse, the black horse, and the pale horse, they're all seals breaking. 1, 2, 3, 4, and major events that take place. Now, those seals don't break and you just have one day. This is a period of time, a process of which we see the seals being broken and these events being released. So when Jesus makes reference to the fig tree, folks, he's saying it's just about over. And when you see the fig tree, and he compares, of course, Israel to a fig tree. When you see these things coming to pass, you know the end is near. And I'm telling you now, it's exciting to study the Bible because, look, I'm not afraid of the end times. As a matter of fact, I understand that Christ is coming. You have to understand something. A lot of my loved ones, a lot of your loved ones are sleeping quietly in the grave right now, waiting on the voice of the archangel of God, the sound of the trumpet, and they're going to come forth. They're going to come forth with glorified bodies like unto the Lord. They're going to come out of the grave shouting. I'm telling you, the Lord's coming. And guess what, folks? Those of you that are right here right now, some of you may actually be changed in the moment of a twinkling of an eye. You may be alive on this planet when Christ comes to gather the redeemed of God and to rapture us out of this world. Don't you dare be left behind. I'll be right back in just a moment.
The world is experiencing an alarming series of apocalyptic events: historic weather disasters, earthquakes, droughts, wildfires, impending economic collapse, the rise of AI. In Revelation 9:11, Pastor Paul Begley and Pulitzer-nominated journalist Troy Anderson investigate if these are the true signs of the end times. Is this the final meeting of current events and prophecy referred to in the Bible? Revelation 9:11. Order it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Target.com.
All right, folks, I know what you're thinking. So Pastor Begley, has the clock started ticking? The answer is yes. The clock is ticking. Now, do we start it in 1917 or 1948 or 1967? That can be debatable. But one thing's for sure, you're now living in the fig tree generation, and time is running out. Really, a 30-minute program like this, there's no way to break it down for you to help understand some of the other nuances of what's happening in the last days. But if you do visit our website, we've got a lot of material, a lot of good DVDs and books and things that can help you get more in depth to this to kind of give you a better idea. But ultimately, check out our website. You can find it there. But ultimately, I want people to know the time we're in. And it's nothing to be afraid of, okay? This is it. This is a great time to be alive. This is the most awesome time. You know what the Bible said? The dead in Christ are going to rise first, and us that are alive and remain will be caught up forever to be with the Lord, and so shall we be with the Lord. I mean, so this is it, folks. I think we got to be about the Father's business. I believe we've got to reach out to our families, reach out to our friends. I'm asking you to ask your friends, your son, your daughter, your mother, your father, your uncle, to watch these programs. We're on every week here on this channel. Ask them to say, look, watch this guy. He's talking about some of the stuff that we've been talking about around the dinner table and, or, you know, when the family gatherings get together. You see it on the news. This is it, folks. I'm excited about the coming of Jesus Christ, but I'm even more excited about you and I having a relationship with God, living in the victory. Listen, don't sit on the back porch and wait for the rapture. Live. Get out there and live. Get out there and enjoy what God has for you. And for those of you who want to be saved, just pray right now and say, Father, look, I need to be saved. I want to repent of my sins. I want to confess my sins, God, and I want to get saved. I want to get right with God. I realize I need a Savior. And so I call upon the only name that you can call on, the name of Jesus Christ, to save me and to set me free. Folks, I'll be back next week, Lord willing, right here on the coming apocalypse.